Brought to you by Charity Mobile, the phone company that shares your values. More information is available at CharityMobile.com. We turn now to the next portion of St. Vincent of Lerins, doctor and father of the church, his work, The Comminatory. Several months ago, Francis cited this in one of his usual screeds against trads. Weird, because as you're going to hear, St. Vincent of Lerins says if anyone reminds us of what St. Paul said, which is, if anyone brings to you a new gospel, let them be anathema, essentially. I don't know how Francis gets St. Vincent of Lerins being on his side in these things, because Francis clearly preaches a new gospel. I mean, it's obvious. You don't have to be a hardline, meanie-headed trad to note that. St. Vincent of Lerins' work here is instructive for us. He goes over history. He tells about how St. Paul, in various places, said we must resist heresy. That these people who promote heresy are not Catholic, that they preach a false gospel. When they preach a false gospel, they do the work of the evil one. It's pretty straightforward. Don't know why this is so controversial, but then again, there are people who take a sort of anything a pope says on anything as being something you must submit to, which is not what the church has always said. Because there have been bad popes before, just not like what we have now. And again, his even being pope seems to be up for debate. So, St. Vincent of Lerins is a blessing, and I almost am happy. No, I actually am quite happy that Francis tried to quote St. Vincent of Lerins, because I had forgotten about St. Vincent's work. And as soon as he cited him, I got a copy of this. Which, thank you to the patrons for your support of the work here. You helped make that possible. Anyway, without further ado, St. Vincent of Lerins. How heretics craftily cite obscure passages in ancient writers to support their novelties. By St. Vincent of Lerins, from the Comminatory. This condemnation, indeed, seems to have been providentially promulgated, as though with a special view to the fraud of those who, contriving to dress up a heresy under a name other than its own, get hold often of the works of some ancient writer, not very clearly expressed, which, owing to the obscurity of their own doctrine, have the appearance of agreeing with it, so that they get the credit of being neither the first nor the only persons who have held it. This wickedness of theirs, in my judgment, is doubly hateful. First, because they are not afraid to invite others to drink of the poison of heresy, and secondly, because with profane breath, as though fanning smoldering embers into the flame, they blow upon the memory of each holy man, and spread an evil report of what ought to be buried in silence by bringing it again under notice, thus treading in the footsteps of their father Ham, who not only forbore to cover the nakedness of the venerable Noah, but told it to others, that they might laugh at it, offending thereby so grievously against the duty of filial piety, that even his descendants were involved with him in the curse which he drew down, wildly differing from those blessed brothers of his, who would neither pollute their own eyes by looking upon the nakedness of their revered father, nor would suffer others to do so, but went backwards, as the Scripture says, and covered him. That is, they neither approved nor betrayed the fault of the holy man, for which cause they were rewarded with a benediction on themselves and their posterity. But return to the matter in hand. It behooves us then to have a great dread of the crime of perverting the faith and adulterating religion, a crime from which we are deterred not only by the Church's discipline, but also by the censure of apostolical authority. For every one knows how gravely, how severely, how vehemently the blessed Apostle Paul inveighs against certain, who, with marvelous levity, had been so soon removed from him who had called them to the grace of Christ to another gospel, which was not another, who had heaped to themselves teachers after their own lusts, turning away from their ears from the truth, and being turned aside unto fables, having damnation because they had cast off their faith, who had been deceived by those of whom the same apostle writes to the Roman Christians. Now I beseech you, brethren, mark them which cause division and offences, contrary to the doctrine which ye have learned, and avoid them. For they that are such serve not the Lord Christ, but their own belly, and by good words and fair speeches deceive the hearts of the simple, who enter into houses, and lead captive silly women laden with sin, led away with diverse lusts, ever learning, and never to come to the knowledge of the truth. Vain talkers and deceivers, who subvert whole houses, teaching things which they ought not, for filthy lucre's sake. Men of corrupt minds, reprobate concerning the faith, proud, knowing nothing, but doting about questions and strives of words, destitute of the truth, supposing that godliness is gain, withal learning to be idle, wandering about from house to house, and not only idle, but tattlers also, and busybodies, speaking things which they ought not, who having put away a good conscience have made shipwreck concerning the faith, whose profane and vain babblings increase more ungodliness, and their word doth eat as doth a cancer. While also it is written of them, they shall proceed no further, for their folly shall be manifest unto all men, as theirs also was. When therefore certain of this sort of wandering about provinces and cities, and carrying with them venal errors, he found their way to Galatia. And when the Galatians, on hearing them, nauseating the truth and vomiting up the manna of the apostolic and Catholic doctrine, were delighted with the garbage of heretical novelty, the apostle, putting in exercise the authority of his office, delivered his sentence with utmost severity. Though we, he says, or an angel from heaven, preach any other gospel unto you than that which we have preached unto you, let him be accursed. What does he say, though we? Why not rather, though I? He means, though Peter, though Andrew, though John. In a word, though the whole company of apostles preach unto you other than what we have preached unto you, let them be accursed. Tremendous severity. He spares neither himself nor his fellow apostles, so he may preserve unaltered the faith which was at first delivered. Nay, this not all. He goes on. Even though an angel from heaven preach unto you any other gospel than that which we have preached unto you, let him be accursed. It was not enough for the preservation of the faith once delivered to have referred to man. He must needs comprehend angels also. Though we, he says, or an angel from heaven. Not that the holy angels of heaven are now capable of sinning, but what he means is, even if that were to happen, which cannot happen, if anyone, be he who may, attempt to alter the faith once for all delivered, let him be accursed. But it may be he spoke thus in the first instance inconsiderably, giving vent to human impetuosity rather than expressing himself under divine guidance. Far from it. He follows up what he said and urges it with intense reiterated earnestness. As we said before, so say I now again, if any man preach any other gospel to you than that which ye have received, let him be accursed. He does not say, if any man deliver to you another message than that which you have received, let him be blessed, praised, welcome. No, but let him be accursed, meaning anathema, separated, excluded, lest the dire contagion of a single sheep contaminate the guiltless flock of Christ by his poisonous intermixture with them. But possibly this warning was intended for the Galatians only. Be it so. Then those other exhortations which follow in the same epistle were intended for the Galatians only, such as, if we live in the Spirit, let us also walk in the Spirit. Let us not be desirous of vainglory, provoking one another, envying one another, etc. Which alternative, if it be absurd, and the injunctions were meant equally for all, then it follows that as these injunctions which relate to morals, so those warnings which relate to faith are meant equally for all, and just as it is unlawful for all to provoke one another, or to envy one another, so likewise it is unlawful for all to receive any other gospel than that which the Catholic Church preaches everywhere. Or perhaps the anathema pronounced on anyone who should preach another gospel than that which had been preached was meant for those times, not for the present. Then also the exhortation, walk in the Spirit, and ye shall not fulfill the lust of the flesh, was meant for those times, not for the present. But if it both be impious and pernicious to believe this, then it follows necessarily that as these injunctions are to be observed by all ages, so those warnings also which forbid alteration of the faith are warnings intended for all ages. To preach any doctrine, therefore, to Catholic Christians other than what they have received never was lawful, never is lawful, never will be lawful. To anathematize those who preach anything other than what was once received always was a duty, always is a duty, always will be a duty. Which being the case, is there anyone either so audacious as to preach any other doctrine than that which the Church preaches, or so inconstant as to receive any other doctrine than which he has received from the church. That chosen vessel, that teacher of the Gentiles, that trumpet of the apostles, that preacher whose commission was to the whole earth, that man who was caught up to heaven, cries and cries again in his epistles to all, always, in all places, if any man preach any new doctrine, let him be accursed. On the other hand, an ephemeral, moribund set of frogs, fleas, and flies, such as the Pelagians call out in opposition, and that to Catholics. Take our word, follow our lead, accept our exposition, condemn what you used to hold. Hold what you used to condemn. Cast aside the ancient faith, the institutes of your fathers, the trusts left for you by your ancestors, and receive instead. What? I tremble to utter it, for it is so full of arrogance and self-conceit that it seems to me that not only to affirm it, but even to refute it, cannot be done without guilt in some sort. And there you have it. Let them be accursed. There's more to the commentary. I'll bring some more to you hopefully next month. But that's St. Vincent of Lerins, a doctor of the church, who, again, Francis cited this exact work as saying it endorsed changing the faith. Did that several months ago. I don't know how he got that. I doubt he actually read it. Someone probably just handed him a neat-sounding quote to make a point to hammer trads with. I'm curious what you thought of this. We are to resist heretics. That's pretty straightforward. I sometimes get, in fact, lately I've been getting a lot of comments from people saying Francis is perfect because he sits on the throne of Peter, and anything he says goes. That's not what the doctor of this church says. I'm curious what you think of this in the comments, please. Like and subscribe if you haven't. It really does help. Sharing this on social media helps a lot as well. And as always, pray for the church. I'm Anthony Stine. Ave Maria.